The gunshot echoed through the canyon like the crack of God's own whip, and Nora Kincaid knew in that instant her life in Sacramento was about to shatter into 1,000 irreparable pieces. She stood frozen outside the Golden Eagle Saloon on a sweltering August afternoon in 1872, her hand still reaching for the door handle when she heard the commotion inside. Through the dusty windows, she could see men scattering, chairs overturning, and then Sheriff Dalton's heavy boots thundering toward the back exit. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she pressed herself against the rough wooden siding, waiting for the chaos to subside before she dared enter. Sacramento in the summer was a furnace, the heat rising off the packed earth streets in waves that made everything shimmer like a mirage. Nora had arrived in this California town only 3 months prior, fleeing circumstances in Kansas City that she preferred not to dwell on. She had been working as a seamstress for Mrs. Henderson, keeping her head down, trying to build something resembling a normal life. But normal had never been Nora's forte, and trouble had a way of finding her even when she was not looking for it. Inside the saloon, she found Owen Nash leaning against the bar, his shirt torn at the shoulder, a trickle of blood running down his sun-bronzed forearm. He was perhaps 24 or 25, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of whiskey in candlelight. Those eyes found hers across the room, and something passed between them that Nora could not name but felt deep in her bones. "You should not be here," Owen said, his voice rough as gravel. "There was trouble. I can see that." Nora moved closer, her practical nature overriding any sense of caution. She was 22 years old and had seen enough of life to know that a bleeding man needed tending, regardless of the circumstances. "Let me look at that arm. It is nothing." But he did not pull away when she reached for him, her fingers gentle as they assessed the wound. It was a graze, nothing serious, but it needed cleaning. "I have supplies at my boarding house," she said. "It is just down the street." Owen studied her face for a long moment, taking in her dark blonde hair pinned back in a simple bun, the dusting of freckles across her nose, the determined set of her jaw. She was not a classical beauty, but there was something about her that caught and held attention. Intelligence shone in her green eyes and competence radiated from her every movement. "Why would you help me?" he asked. "You do not even know me." "Does that matter?" Nora met his gaze steadily. "You are hurt." Behind them, the bartender was righting furniture and muttering under his breath about cowboys and their damn fool pride. Owen pushed away from the bar, swaying slightly, and Nora realized he had lost more blood than she initially thought. She slipped under his good arm, supporting his weight as they made their way toward the door. "My dog," Owen said suddenly, stopping short. "Rufus. He is outside." And indeed, there on the wooden sidewalk lay a massive red and white dog, some mixture of shepherd and hound, with intelligent brown eyes that watched their approach. The dog rose as they emerged into the brutal sunshine, tail wagging slowly, and pressed his nose against Owen's free hand. "Good boy," Owen murmured, his voice softening in a way that made Nora's heart squeeze unexpectedly. "Stay close." The three of them made an odd procession down Sacramento's Main Street. Nora with her arm around the injured cowboy, the dog padding faithfully at his master's side, drawing stares from shopkeepers and passers-by. Mrs. Henderson herself stood in the doorway of her dress shop, eyes wide with disapproval, but Nora kept her gaze forward and did not slow her pace. Her boarding house room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a single window that looked out over the back alley. She settled Owen into the only chair and set about heating water over her small spirit lamp. Rufus lay down beside his master's feet, chin resting on his paws, watching Nora's every movement with what seemed like cautious approval. "What happened back there?" Nora asked as she carefully cut away the ruined sleeve of Owen's shirt. The wound was indeed superficial, but it had bled freely, and his face was pale beneath its tan. "A disagreement over cards," Owen said, then added with brutal honesty, "I was cheating." Nora's hand stilled. "You were cheating?" "Yes." He met her eyes without flinching. "I am not a good man, Miss Kincaid. You should probably throw me out right now." "How do you know my name?" "Everyone knows the new seamstress. Sacramento is not that big a town." He watched as she resumed cleaning the wound, her touch gentle despite her obvious disapproval. "You are going to help me anyway, are not you?" "I already started," Nora said shortly. "I finish what I begin." She worked in silence for several minutes, cleaning and bandaging the wound with practiced efficiency. Owen bore her ministrations without complaint, though she saw him wince when she applied the antiseptic. "Where did you learn to do this?" he asked. "My father was a doctor. Before he died, he taught me a few things." Nora tied off the bandage and stepped back, surveying her handiwork. "You should rest for a bit before you try to leave. You lost more blood than you think." "I cannot stay here. It would ruin your reputation." "My reputation is my own concern." But even as she said it, Nora knew he was right. A single woman entertaining a man in her room, even an injured one, would be enough to set tongues wagging all over town. Mrs. Henderson would probably dismiss her. "At least sit for a few more minutes. Have some water." She poured him a glass from her pitcher, and he drank gratefully. Rufus raised his head, and Nora filled a bowl for him as well. The dog lapped noisily, then returned to his vigil beside Owen's chair. "He is a good dog," Nora observed. "The best." Owen reached down to scratch behind Rufus's ears. "Found him as a puppy out near Folsom, half-starved and alone. Been together 3 years now." "And where are you from originally?" "Texas. Little town you have never heard of near the border." Owen leaned his head back against the wall, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. "Left when I was 17. Been drifting ever since." "Why Sacramento?" "Why anywhere?" He opened his eyes and looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I heard there was ranch work to be had. Been staying at the Double R doing breaking and training. The owner, Robert Richmond, he is a fair man, pays decent. And gambling in saloons on your days off. A man has to have some entertainment." But there was no humor in his voice, only a bone-deep weariness that spoke of years lived hard. "I know what you are thinking, that I am no good, that I am exactly the kind of man a respectable woman should avoid." "I am thinking that you are hurt and tired," Nora said quietly, "and that we all make choices we are not proud of sometimes." Owen studied her for a long moment. "What are you running from, Nora Kincaid?" The question hung in the air between them, weighted with more truth than either of them was ready to acknowledge. Nora turned away, busying herself with putting away her medical supplies. "I should go," Owen said finally, pushing himself to his feet. He swayed, and Nora caught his arm to steady him. "Thank you for this, for not judging." "I did judge," Nora said honestly, "but I also understand that people are more complicated than their worst moments." Owen smiled then, a real smile that transformed his face from handsome to devastating. "You are something, Miss Kincaid, something special. You do not even know me." "Maybe I would like to." Nora felt heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the Sacramento summer. "You should rest properly, at least spend the night somewhere safe, not the saloon." "The bunkhouse at the Double R will do fine." Owen moved toward the door, Rufus rising to follow. "But maybe I will see you again, around town." "Maybe." After they left, Nora sat on her narrow bed and wondered what she had just done. She had tended to an injured man, yes, but she had also felt something spark to life inside her that she thought had died long ago in Kansas City. Hope, perhaps, or possibility, or simply the dangerous allure of a man who was honest about his flaws. She did not expect to see Owen Nash again. Men like that, drifters and gamblers, they moved on when the wind changed. It was what they did. But 3 days later, when she was leaving Mrs. Henderson's dress shop with her arms full of fabric, she heard a familiar voice behind her. Miss Kincaid. She turned to find Owen standing on the sidewalk, hat in hand, looking clean and properly dressed in work clothes that showed off his broad shoulders. And beside him, tail wagging, was Rufus. "Mr. Nash," she said, fighting to keep her voice neutral. "I see you survived your misadventure." "Thanks to you," he gestured to his arm. "Healing up nicely. I wanted to thank you properly, maybe buy you dinner." "That is not necessary." "Necessary, no, but I would like to if you would accept." Nora should have said no. Should have walked away from this man who was clearly trouble wrapped in an appealing package. But she found herself nodding instead, agreeing to meet him at the respectable restaurant on 2nd Street the following evening. That dinner led to another, and then to walks along the Sacramento River in the evening when the heat finally broke. Owen was good company, surprisingly well-read despite his lack of formal education, with a dry wit that made her laugh. He told her stories of his travels, of breaking horses and sleeping under stars, of towns he had passed through and people he had known. He did not ask about her past, and she was grateful for that. Rufus became their constant companion. The dog seemed to have adopted Nora as much as Owen had, staying close to her side during their walks, resting his head on her lap when they sat by the river. She had never had a dog before, and she found herself charmed by his loyalty and gentle nature. "He likes you," Owen observed one evening as they watched the sun set over the water, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Rufus lay between them, content. "I like him too." Nora scratched behind the dog's ears, earning a groan of pleasure. "He is easier to understand than most people." "That is the truth." Owen was quiet for a moment, then added, "I have been thinking about staying in Sacramento, making something of myself, maybe saving up to buy some land of my own someday." Nora's heart gave a treacherous leap. "Is that what you want?" "I do not know what I want," Owen admitted. "I have spent so long drifting, never putting down roots, never letting anyone get close. It seemed safer that way. But lately I have been wondering if maybe I have been wrong, if maybe there is another way to live." "We can always choose differently," Nora said softly. "Start over, become someone new." "Is that what you did? When you came to Sacramento?" She had known this question would come eventually. "Yes, I left behind a man who thought he owned me, a situation that was not safe. I chose to leave with nothing rather than stay with everything." Owen reached over and took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against hers. That took courage, or desperation, but she did not pull away from his touch. Sometimes there is not much difference. They sat like that as darkness fell, hands linked, the dog warm against their sides, and Nora allowed herself to imagine a future that did not involve running. A future that might include this rough-edged cowboy and his faithful dog, building something together in this California town. The autumn came, and with it cooler weather. Owen continued working at the Double R, proving himself reliable despite his past. He stopped going to the saloons, stopped gambling, started saving his wages. Nora watched this transformation with a mixture of hope and trepidation. She had seen men promise to change before. Her father had made such promises to her mother before the drinking killed him. Her former lover in Kansas City had sworn he would be different, right up until the night he raised his fist to her. But Owen seemed genuine in his efforts. He came to town every Sunday, clean-shaven and presentable, to escort her to church services. He helped Mrs. Henderson repair her shop's front steps without being asked, earning grudging approval from the older woman. He was patient with Nora's hesitations, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. "I care about you," he told her one November evening as they sat in the parlor of her boarding house, properly chaperoned by the landlady. "I know I am not much, just a cowboy with a checkered past. But I am trying to be better. For you, you should be better for yourself," Nora said, though her heart was melting despite her attempts to guard it. "Not for me. Maybe you make me want to be better for myself." Owen leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Nora, I have never felt this way about anyone. I want to build something real, something lasting, with you." She wanted that too, wanted it so badly it frightened her. But there was still a part of her that expected the trap to spring, the mask to slip, the truth to reveal itself as something darker. "I need time," she said. "I will give you all the time you need." But time, as it turned out, was not something they had in abundance. In December, a letter arrived for Nora from her sister in Kansas City. Their mother was gravely ill, perhaps dying. Nora was needed at home. She found Owen at the Double R, working in the corral with a spirited bay mare. He saw her face and immediately handed the horse off to another wrangler, vaulting over the fence to reach her side. "What is wrong?" She told him about the letter, about her mother's illness, about the impossibility of her situation. "I have to go. She is my mother. But I am terrified to go back there, if Jacob finds out I am in town." Jacob, the man she had fled, the man who had sworn no one would ever leave him. "I will come with you," Owen said immediately. "You cannot. Your job, your life, everything is here. Nothing matters more than you being safe." He took both her hands in his. "Nora, I love you. I have loved you since the day you patched me up and did not ask me to be anything other than what I was. Let me do this for you. Let me come with you. Owen." His name was a prayer and a plea. "I love you too. But I cannot ask you to risk yourself for me. You are not asking. I am offering." He pulled her close and she went willingly, burying her face against his chest. "We will face this together." In the end, practical considerations made the decision for them. Nora could not afford 2 train tickets to Kansas City. She barely had enough for one, and Owen's savings were earmarked for the land he dreamed of buying. They could not simply throw away months of careful planning and sacrifice. "I will go alone," Nora said, trying to sound brave. "I will stay with my sister, help my mother, and be back before spring. 2 months, maybe 3 at most. I do not like it. I do not either. But it is what we have to do." They made plans. Nora would take the train east after Christmas. Owen would keep working, keep saving. They would write to each other, and when she returned, they would talk seriously about marriage, about the future they both wanted. "What about Rufus?" Owen asked suddenly. They were in Nora's room, surrounded by her half-packed trunk, the dog lying by the door. "I am in the bunkhouse all day. He needs more attention than I can give him out there." "Bring him to town," Nora suggested. "Maybe Mrs. Henderson would let him stay in her shop. She has been softer toward me lately." But Mrs. Henderson, when approached, was firm in her refusal. No dogs in her establishment. It was unhygienic. The problem seemed insurmountable until Nora had an idea. "What if Rufus comes with me? To Kansas City?" Owen looked torn. "That is a long journey for a dog. He would keep me safe, give me courage." Nora knelt beside the dog, running her hands through his thick fur. "And I would take excellent care of him. You know I would. I know." Owen crouched down beside them. "But he is my dog, my best friend. I do not know if I can let him go, even temporarily. It is just for a few months until I come back." They debated it for days. Nora understood Owen's reluctance. Rufus was more than just a pet to him. The dog represented loyalty, constancy, the one relationship in Owen's life that had never wavered or disappointed. To send Rufus away, even with someone he trusted, felt like a betrayal. But ultimately, Owen's concern for Nora's safety won out. "If he is with you, I will know you have someone watching over you, someone who will protect you if Jacob comes around." "He will protect me," Nora agreed, "and I will bring him home safely. I promise." The day of her departure arrived too quickly. December 28th, cold and overcast, with the threat of rain in the air. Owen accompanied her to the train station, Rufus walking between them on a sturdy leash. Her trunk was already loaded into the baggage car, and the conductor was calling for passengers to board. "Write to me as soon as you arrive," Owen said, his voice rough with emotion. "Let me know you are safe." "I will." Nora looked down at Rufus, who was watching her with soulful eyes, as if he understood that something momentous was happening. "I will take such good care of him. I swear it. I know you will." Owen pulled her close, kissing her with a desperation that spoke of all his fears and hopes. "Come back to me, Nora Kincaid. Come back in the spring and we will start our life together." "I will come back," she promised against his lips. "I will come back for you." "All aboard," the conductor shouted. Nora grabbed her carpetbag and Rufus's leash and climbed onto the train. She found a seat by the window and pressed her face to the glass, watching Owen standing alone on the platform. He raised his hand in farewell, and she raised hers in return, tears streaming down her face. The train lurched into motion. Owen grew smaller and smaller in the distance until he disappeared entirely, swallowed by the December gloom. Beside her, Rufus whined softly and rested his head on her lap. "It is just for a little while," Nora whispered to him, stroking his fur. "Just until spring. Then we will both go home." But as the train carried them eastward, away from Sacramento and Owen and the fragile dream they had been building, Nora felt dread settle in her stomach like a stone. She had promised to return. She had meant every word. But she had learned long ago that promises, no matter how sincerely made, were fragile things in a hard world. Kansas City in winter was a study in gray. Gray skies, gray snow piled along the streets, gray faces of people hurrying through the cold. Nora's sister Elizabeth met her at the station, looking older than her 26 years, worn down by the hardships of caring for their dying mother. "Thank God you came," Elizabeth said, embracing her tightly. "I did not know how much longer I could manage alone." Their mother lingered through January and into February, wasting away despite their best efforts. Nora spent her days in a cramped apartment that smelled of sickness and coal smoke, bathing her mother's fevered brow, spooning broth between cracked lips, and trying not to think about Sacramento's sunshine and Owen's smile. Rufus became her lifeline. The dog seemed to understand the sadness in the house, staying quiet and gentle, offering his warm presence as comfort. Nora wrote to Owen every week, long letters describing her mother's condition, the grimness of Kansas City winter, how much she missed him. She told him about Rufus's good behavior, how the dog slept beside her bed every night, how he had growled at a drunk man who approached her on the street. Owen's letters in return were shorter but no less heartfelt. He told her about work at the ranch, about the land he had found that might be for sale come summer, about how empty his days felt without her and Rufus. He signed every letter the same way, counting the days until spring brings you home. Nora was counting too. Counting and hoping and praying that she could keep her promise. Her mother died on February 14th, Valentine's Day, slipping away peacefully in her sleep. The funeral was small and somber. Nora stood at the graveside with Elizabeth and a handful of neighbors, and thought about her father buried in this same cemetery, about the hard life her parents had lived, about all the dreams that had died unrealized. "What will you do now?" Elizabeth asked afterward, back at the apartment that felt cavernous without their mother's labored breathing to fill it. "Will you stay?" "I cannot," Nora said. "I have a life in Sacramento, someone waiting for me." "A man?" Elizabeth's eyes sharpened with interest. "Tell me." Nora told her about Owen, about the courtship, about the love that had grown between them. Elizabeth listened with a wistfulness that made Nora realize how lonely her sister's own life had become. "Go to him," Elizabeth said finally. "Do not make the same mistakes Mother made. Do not stay somewhere out of duty when love is waiting somewhere else." Nora began making preparations to leave. She would take the train back to Sacramento in March, as soon as the last of her mother's affairs were settled. She wrote to Owen with the news, with the expected date of her arrival, with all the love and longing in her heart. But then, 3 days before she was meant to depart, Jacob Thornton walked into her life again. He found her at the market, her arms full of vegetables, Rufus walking obediently at her side. She did not see him until he was standing directly in front of her, blocking her path with his solid bulk. "Nora," he said, and his voice was exactly as she remembered. Smooth, charming, with an edge underneath that most people missed. "I heard you were back in town." Every instinct screamed at her to run, but running would show fear, and fear was what men like Jacob fed on. She forced herself to stand still, to meet his pale blue eyes without flinching. "Jacob." "You left without saying goodbye." He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "That was not very polite. I had my reasons." "I am sure you did." His gaze dropped to Rufus, who had moved to stand between Nora and Jacob, hackles raised, a low growl rumbling in his chest. "New dog." "I remember you never wanted pets. Things change." "Yes, they do." Jacob stepped closer, and Rufus's growl intensified. "We should talk, Nora, about old times, about what you owe me." "I owe you nothing." "I disagree." The mask slipped for just a moment, letting her see the anger underneath. "You took money from me, jewelry, things that were mine to give, not yours to steal. You gave those things to me freely, as gifts to my intended wife. When you left, you stole them." Jacob's voice remained conversational, but his hands had curled into fists. "I want them back, or their value. $500 should cover it. $500. It might as well have been 5,000. Nora had barely $20 to her name after paying for her mother's funeral. "I do not have that kind of money." "Then you will have to work it off. Come back to me. Be what you were meant to be." "No." The word came out stronger than she felt. "Never." Jacob's face hardened. "You think you can just walk away from me? You think I will let you disappear again?" Rufus barked sharply, and several people in the market turned to stare. Jacob noticed the attention and stepped back, his smile returning like a mask pulled back into place. "Think about it," he said pleasantly. $500 or come back to me. Those are your options. You have 1 week to decide." He walked away before Nora could respond, leaving her shaking in the middle of the market, vegetables scattered at her feet where she had dropped them. Rufus pressed protectively against her legs. She fled back to the apartment and locked herself inside. Her mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. She could not pay Jacob. She would never go back to him. But what would he do when she refused both options? Men like Jacob did not make idle threats. That night she wrote to Owen. She told him everything about Jacob's confrontation, about the impossible debt, about her fear. She asked him what she should do. Should she come back to Sacramento as planned and risk Jacob following her? Should she disappear somewhere else entirely, start over again in yet another town? But even as she wrote, Nora knew the letter would take over a week to reach Sacramento, and Owen's reply would take even longer to come back. She needed to make a decision now, before Jacob's deadline expired. The solution, when it came to her, was terrible and necessary in equal measure. She would send Rufus back to Sacramento on the train. The dog would be safer with Owen, and Jacob would have one less thing to use against her. Then she would leave Kansas City, but not for Sacramento. Not yet. Not until she was certain Jacob was not following her. She would go somewhere else first. Denver, maybe, or Santa Fe. Somewhere she could work for a few months, save money, make sure Jacob had lost her trail, and then, when it was safe, she would return to Owen. It would take longer than spring, maybe summer, maybe even autumn, but she would return, eventually. It was the only plan that made sense, the only plan that kept everyone she loved safe. But when she tried to put Rufus on the train the next morning, the dog refused to leave her side. He planted his feet and would not budge, no matter how much she coaxed or commanded. The conductor grew impatient, and other passengers were staring, and Nora finally gave up in tears. "You stubborn beast," she told the dog, who licked her face as if to say he was sorry but not sorry at all. "What am I going to do with you?" Rufus had made his choice. He was staying with Nora, no matter what. So they left Kansas City together 3 days later, not on a train heading west to Sacramento, but on one heading south to St. Louis. Nora had decided that a larger city would be easier to disappear in. She could find work there, save money, and wait for the right time to go home. She wrote to Owen from St. Louis, explaining her decision. The letter was difficult to write, full of apologies and promises she was not sure she could keep. She told him she loved him. She told him she would come back. She told him to be patient, to trust her, to understand why she had to do this. She mailed the letter and waited for his reply. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into a month. No response came. Nora told herself the mail was unreliable, that her letter had been lost, that Owen's reply had gone astray. But doubt crept in nonetheless. What if he thought she was abandoning him? What if he decided she was not worth waiting for? What if he had moved on, found someone else, someone who did not come with so much baggage and danger? She found work in a laundry, hard physical labor that left her exhausted, but provided enough money to pay for a tiny room in a boarding house. Rufus stayed with her, sleeping on a blanket beside her narrow bed, accompanying her on her rare days off when she explored the city. The dog was her constant companion, her protection, her link to the life she had left behind in Sacramento. March became April. April became May. Still no letter from Owen. Nora told herself it was not spring yet anyway. Not really. Spring in Missouri was different from spring in California. She would wait until June. Surely by June she would have heard from him. Surely by June it would be safe to go home. But in late May, she saw Jacob Thornton on a street corner in downtown St. Louis. She was not certain at first. The man was too far away, his face partially obscured by the crowd. But something about the way he moved, the set of his shoulders, sent ice through her veins. She grabbed Rufus's collar and ducked into an alley, her heart hammering. When she dared to look again, the man was gone. Maybe it had not been Jacob at all. Maybe she was seeing threats in every shadow. But the fear remained, and with it the knowledge that she could not stay in St. Louis. Not if there was even a chance Jacob had tracked her there. She had to keep moving, had to stay ahead of him, had to survive. That night, she made the hardest decision of her life. She would send Rufus back to Sacramento without her. The dog deserved better than this rootless existence, constantly looking over her shoulder, never staying in one place long enough to feel safe. Owen would take care of him. Owen would give him the stable home that Nora could not provide right now. She went to the train station the next morning with Rufus, and all the money she could spare for his fare. She found a sympathetic conductor who agreed to make sure the dog was fed and watered during the journey, who promised to put him off at the Sacramento station, where someone could claim him. "His name is Rufus," Nora told the conductor, tears streaming down her face as she tied a note to the dog's collar. The note had Owen's name and the address of the Double R Ranch. "His owner is Owen Nash. He is a good dog. Please make sure he gets home." "I will, miss," the conductor promised. Nora knelt down and wrapped her arms around Rufus's solid warmth. "I am so sorry," she whispered into his fur. "Tell Owen I am sorry. Tell him I will come back. Tell him I love him." Rufus whined and licked her face, not understanding why his person was crying, why she smelled of fear and sadness. The conductor had to physically pull the dog away and lead him onto the train. Rufus barked and tried to pull back, and Nora had to turn away, covering her mouth to keep from sobbing aloud. The train pulled out of the station with Rufus's face pressed to a window, watching her. Nora watched back until the train disappeared from sight. Then she walked back to her boarding house, packed her few belongings, and bought a ticket on a different train heading to a different city. She would keep running, keep hiding, until she found a way to be safe, or until she was certain she never would be. Either way, she had sent Rufus home. That was something. That was enough. The summer of 1873 found Nora Kincaid working in a Denver hotel, cleaning rooms for pennies and trying not to think about Sacramento. She had been on the road for months now, moving from city to city, never staying anywhere long enough to put down roots. She had become a ghost, a shadow, exactly what she had sworn she would never be again. Letters from Owen had finally caught up with her in Denver, forwarded from St. Louis. There were 3 of them, and she read them in her tiny attic room with shaking hands. The first was confused. Where was she? Why had she not come back in spring as promised? Was she all right? Was Rufus with her? The second was worried. He had sent inquiries to Kansas City, had learned about her mother's death, had heard rumors that Jacob Thornton was looking for her. "Please write," he begged. "Please let me know you are safe." The third was angry. How could she just disappear? How could she send no word, no explanation? Did their love mean nothing to her? And then, at the end, the anger dissolved into something rawer. "If you are in trouble, let me help. If you do not love me anymore, tell me so I can stop hoping. But do not leave me in this silence. It is worse than any truth could be." Nora wept over those letters. She wrote back immediately, a long explanation of everything that had happened, all the reasons she had run, all the fear that kept her moving. She told him about sending Rufus home. She told him she loved him still, would always love him, but did not know when it would be safe to return. She mailed that letter and waited. Weeks passed with no reply. Maybe he had given up on her. Maybe he had decided she was more trouble than she was worth. She could not blame him if he had. In September, a letter finally arrived. It was brief. "Rufus made it home safe. He is with me at the ranch. Every day he sits by the road watching for you. Come home, Nora. Whatever you are afraid of, we will face it together. I am not giving up on you, and neither is he. Please do not give up on yourself." Nora clutched that letter to her chest and made a decision. She was done running. Whatever happened, whatever Jacob did, she would face it in Sacramento with Owen by her side. She would go home, but going home required money she did not have. The train fare from Denver to Sacramento was more than her meager savings could cover. So she stayed in Denver through the autumn, working double shifts when she could, saving every penny. She wrote to Owen regularly now, telling him her plan, giving him a tentative date in spring when she hoped to have enough money for the journey. Winter came, and with it snow that buried Denver under white drifts. Nora worked through the cold months, her hands red and chapped from washing linens, her body aching from long hours on her feet. But her savings grew slowly but steadily. and hope began to replace the fear that had driven her for so long. In March of 1874, she finally had enough money. She gave notice at the hotel, packed her few belongings, and bought a train ticket to Sacramento. She was going home. The journey took 5 days of rattling tracks and uncomfortable seats and endless anticipation. Nora stared out the window at the changing landscape, watching plains give way to mountains, mountains give way to valleys, valleys give way to the familiar golden hills of California. She was almost there, almost home. The train pulled into Sacramento on a warm April afternoon. Spring had arrived in full force, the air soft and sweet with the scent of blossoms. Nora stepped onto the platform with her battered carpetbag, looking around at the familiar town with eyes that felt new. So much had changed, and yet so much was the same. The Golden Eagle Saloon still stood on the corner. Mrs. Henderson's dress shop still had its neat white trim. The Sacramento River still flowed past the edge of town, its waters sparkling in the sunlight. But where was Owen? She had written to tell him when she expected to arrive, but there was no sign of him on the platform. Had her letter not reached him in time? Or had he decided not to come? Nora felt panic begin to rise. She had been so certain, so sure that coming home was the right choice. But what if Owen had changed his mind? What if the 15 months she had been gone had been too long? What if he had found someone else, someone who did not bring chaos and danger into his life? Miss Kincaid. She turned to find a young ranch hand standing behind her, hat in hand. Yes. I am from the Double R. Owen Nash asked me to fetch you. He is at the ranch, could not get away, but he sent me with the wagon. Relief flooded through her. He knew I was coming. Yes, miss, got your letter 3 days ago. He has talked of nothing else since. The wagon ride to the Double R took an hour along dusty roads lined with wildflowers. The ranch hand, whose name was Tom, kept up a steady stream of cheerful conversation about the ranch, the weather, the new foals born that spring. Nora barely heard him. Her entire being was focused on what lay ahead. And then they were there, rolling through the gates of the Double R, and Nora saw Owen standing in front of the barn, waiting. Beside him sat Rufus, ears pricked forward, tail beginning to wag as the wagon approached. Tom had barely pulled the horses to a stop before Rufus launched himself forward with a joyous bark. The dog reached Nora as she climbed down from the wagon, nearly bowling her over with the force of his enthusiasm. She dropped to her knees and threw her arms around him, burying her face in his fur as he whined and wiggled and licked every part of her he could reach. I missed you too, she laughed through her tears. I missed you so much. And then Owen was there, pulling her to her feet, his arms coming around her in an embrace that felt like coming home. She looked up into his face and saw everything she needed to know written there. Love, relief, forgiveness, joy. You came back, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I was starting to think you never would. I promised I would come back for you both, Nora said, reaching up to touch his face, needing to confirm he was real. I am sorry it took so long. I am sorry for everything. You are here now. That is all that matters. Owen bent his head and kissed her, and it was like the first kiss and every kiss they had shared before, familiar and new all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead against hers. Do not ever leave me again. I will not, Nora promised. Never again. That evening, sitting on the porch of the bunkhouse with Rufus between them and the California sunset, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, Nora told Owen everything. All the details she had left out of her letters. The full story of her flight from Kansas City, her months of running, her fear and loneliness and the constant weight of looking over her shoulder. Owen listened without interrupting, his hand never leaving hers. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Jacob Thornton," he said finally. "He is the reason you ran." "Yes." "Is he still looking for you?" "I do not know. I hope not. I hope he gave up and moved on." But even as Nora said it, she knew it might not be true. Men like Jacob did not give up easily. "If he comes here, he will have to go through me first." Owen's voice was hard. "And I promise you, Nora, I will not let him hurt you. I do not want you to have to fight my battles. When you marry me, your battles become my battles." Owen shifted to face her fully. "That is what I am asking, Nora Kincaid. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life protecting you, loving you, building a future with you?" Nora's breath caught. She had dreamed of this moment during the long months away, had imagined it 1,000 different ways. But the reality was better than any dream. "Yes," she said, her voice steady and sure. "Yes, I will marry you." Owen pulled a simple gold band from his pocket. "I bought this last summer. Been carrying it around ever since, hoping I would have a chance to give it to you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and Nora felt something settle inside her. An anchor. A home. A promise kept. They were married 2 weeks later in Sacramento's small church, with Tom and a few other ranch hands as witnesses. Nora wore a dress she had sewn herself from Fabric Mrs. Henderson had sold her at a generous discount. Owen wore his best clothes, his hair neatly trimmed, his face shining with happiness. Rufus sat in the front pew and barked once during the vows, making everyone laugh. It was not a grand wedding, but it was perfect. Exactly what they both needed. Robert Richmond, owner of the Double R, gave them a week off for a honeymoon. They spent it in a cabin in the foothills, just the two of them and Rufus, learning each other in the ways that newlyweds do. Owen was gentle and patient with Nora, understanding that her past had left scars that needed careful handling. She learned to trust his touch, to accept his love without waiting for the betrayal that never came. "I feel safe with you," she told him one night as they lay tangled together under starlight, the cabin door open to the warm spring air. "For the first time in years, I feel truly safe." "You are safe," Owen promised, kissing her temple. "You will always be safe with me." When they returned to the ranch, they moved into a small cottage that Richmond had offered them at a reduced rent. It was tiny, just 2 rooms and a kitchen, but it was theirs. Nora hung curtains she had sewn, arranged the simple furniture to her liking, and felt a contentment she had never known before. Owen continued working at the ranch, and Nora took in sewing and mending from the town. Between the two of them, they saved carefully, always with an eye toward Owen's dream of buying his own land. They talked about it in the evenings, making plans, imagining the house they would build, the horses they would raise, the life they would create together. Summer passed peacefully. Nora began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she had finally outrun her past, that Jacob Thornton had given up, that she could stop looking over her shoulder and simply live. But in August, a stranger came to Sacramento asking questions about a blonde woman with green eyes. Tom heard about it in town and came back to warn them. Said he was a business associate looking for someone who owed him money, Tom reported. "But the description matched you, Mrs. Nash." Owen's face went hard. Did he give a name? No. But he asked a lot of questions about newcomers to town, women who had arrived in the last few months. Nora felt the fear come rushing back, cold and familiar. "It is him. It has to be." "We do not know that for certain," Owen said, but his hand had dropped to the revolver he wore at his hip these days. "Could be a coincidence. You do not believe that any more than I do." Over the next few days, more reports came in. The stranger had been seen at the hotel, at the general store, at the train station. He was persistent, methodical, working his way through town. It was only a matter of time before he found what he was looking for, Owen made a decision. "We are leaving tonight. Where will we go?" "I do not know yet. Somewhere he cannot find you, maybe north toward Oregon or south into Mexico." Owen began gathering their few belongings, his movements quick and efficient. "We can start over somewhere else, build a new life." "No." Nora stood in the middle of their cottage, feeling something harden inside her. "No, I will not run anymore. I am done running." "Nora, be reasonable. If this man is Jacob Thornton, if he has tracked you all this way, he is not going to give up. The safest thing is to leave." "I have been running for 2 years. I am tired of being afraid, tired of letting him control my life." Nora lifted her chin. "This is my home now, our home. I am not abandoning it." "Then what do you suggest we do?" "We face him. Together. We tell him I do not owe him anything, that I am married now, that he needs to leave me alone." Owen looked at her for a long moment. "You know he will not accept that peacefully." "I know. But I also know I cannot keep running forever. Eventually, I have to stand and fight." "All right," Owen said finally. "Then we stand together." The confrontation came 2 days later. Jacob Thornton rode up to their cottage in the late afternoon, alone, his expensive suit dusty from travel. He dismounted and stood looking at the cottage, at the neat curtains in the windows, at the vegetable garden Nora had planted, taking in every detail. Owen stepped out onto the porch, Nora beside him, Rufus growling low in his throat at their feet. Jacob smiled when he saw them. "There you are," he said pleasantly. "I have been looking for you for quite some time, Nora. I know." Nora forced her voice to stay steady. "You need to leave. I do not want you here." "That is unfortunate, because I am not leaving without what I am owed." Jacob's eyes flicked to Owen, assessing. "I see you have found yourself a new protector. How touching." "She is my wife," Owen said flatly, "and you need to get off our property." "Your wife?" Jacob laughed. "How quickly she moves on." "Tell me, Cowboy, did she tell you about the $500 she stole from me?" "I stole nothing. Those were gifts. Conditional gifts, given with the expectation of marriage. When you ran, you violated that expectation." Jacob's voice remained calm, reasonable, but Nora could see the anger in his eyes. "I have come to collect what is mine, one way or another." "I do not have $500, Nora said. "I have nothing to give you. Then you will have to come back to Kansas City with me and work off the debt." "She is not going anywhere with you," Owen said, his hand moving toward his gun. Jacob noticed the movement and raised his hands in mock surrender. "No need for violence. I am a reasonable man. We can work something out." He looked directly at Nora. "I will forgive the debt entirely. Walk away and never bother you again, on one condition." "What condition?" "Come back to Kansas City with me for 1 year. Be my wife as you were meant to be. After a year, if you still want to leave, I will let you go, free and clear." "No," Owen said before Nora could respond. "That is not happening. I am talking to Nora, not you." Jacob's pleasant facade slipped slightly. "This is between her and me. Anything that concerns my wife concerns me." Owen stepped down from the porch, putting himself between Nora and Jacob. "You need to leave, now, before this gets ugly." "Are you threatening me?" "I am telling you how things are going to be. You are going to get back on your horse and ride out of Sacramento. You are going to forget Nora exists, and if you ever come near her again, I will put a bullet in you." Jacob's face darkened. "You think you can threaten me? Do you have any idea who I am, what I can do to you?" "I know exactly what you are." Owen's voice was cold. "You are a bully and a coward who thinks he can own a woman because he gave her some baubles. Well, she is not your property. She is my wife, and I will defend her with everything I have." For a moment the two men stood facing each other, and Nora held her breath. Certain violence was about to erupt. Rufus was barking now, a continuous aggressive sound, ready to attack on Owen's command. Then Jacob stepped back, his hands raised. "Fine, have it your way. But this is not over, Nora. I always collect my debts, always." He mounted his horse and rode away, leaving the three of them standing in front of the cottage, tense and watchful, until he disappeared from sight. "He will be back," Nora said quietly. "Men like him always come back. Let him come." Owen pulled her close. "We will be ready." But as the days passed and Jacob did not return, they began to hope that maybe, just maybe, Owen's confrontation had been enough. That Jacob had decided she was not worth the trouble, that they could finally live in peace. In September, Robert Richmond called Owen to his office. "I have a proposition for you," the older man said. "There is a section of land on the north edge of my property, 20 acres with a good water source and decent grazing. I have been thinking about selling it, and I would like to sell it to you." Owen's eyes widened. "I cannot afford 20 acres. I know what you have been saving, and I am willing to offer very generous terms. A small down payment and you can pay off the rest over 5 years at low interest." Richmond leaned back in his chair. "You are the best horseman I have ever employed, Owen. Hard-working, honest, dependable. I would rather have you as a neighbor than see you leave to find land elsewhere." It was everything Owen had been working toward. He came home that evening nearly bursting with the news. He and Nora went out to see the land the next day, walking over the gently rolling terrain, imagining where they would build their house, where the barn and corral would go. "We could do this," Owen said, looking at Nora with hope shining in his eyes. "We could really do this, have our own place. Raise horses, build something that lasts." "Yes," Nora said, feeling tears prick her eyes. "Yes, we could." They shook hands with Richmond the following week, signed the papers, made the down payment from their carefully hoarded savings. The land was theirs. That autumn and winter, they threw themselves into building their dream. Richmond allowed Owen to take time from his regular duties to work on the house, and several of the other ranch hands volunteered to help. A simple structure began to rise on the land, nothing fancy but solid and well built. By December, the walls were up and the roof was on. Nora sewed curtains and quilts, furniture was built or purchased, and slowly the house became a home. They moved in just before Christmas, carrying their few possessions across the threshold together, Rufus bounding ahead as if he knew this place was special. "This is ours," Owen said, standing in the middle of their new front room, his voice filled with wonder. "Actually ours." "Our home," Nora agreed, going into his arms. "Where we will build our life together." That winter was hard but happy. They kept each other warm on cold nights, worked side by side on improvements to the property, made plans for the horses Owen would buy come spring. Nora discovered she was pregnant in February, and they celebrated with tears and laughter and endless discussions of names and nurseries. Spring of 1875 arrived with wildflowers and warm breezes and the promise of new beginnings. Nora's belly rounded with the growing life inside her. Owen bought 3 mares and a young stallion, the foundation of the breeding program he hoped to build. Rufus grew gray around the muzzle but remained their faithful companion, following them everywhere, sleeping beside their bed every night. The baby came in late summer, a healthy boy with Owen's dark hair and Nora's green eyes. They named him Samuel, after Owen's father, and Nora held her son in her arms and felt a completeness she had never imagined possible. "Look what we made," she whispered to Owen as he gazed down at their sleeping child. "Look at this perfect thing. He is perfect because he is part of you." Owen kissed her forehead. "Thank you, Nora, for coming back, for choosing me, for giving me this life. Thank you for waiting for me, for not giving up." They had weathered so much to reach this moment, Nora's flight and Owen's patience, the long separation and the joyful reunion. Jacob's threats and their determination to stand together. And now they had this, a home and a child and a future stretching before them bright with possibility. Rufus, lying beside Nora's bed, thumped his tail as if to say he approved. The dog had been the thread connecting them through all the months apart, the silent keeper of their love story. And now he was here to witness the next chapter beginning. The years that followed were not without challenges. There were droughts and illnesses, lean times when money was tight and worry kept them up at night. But they faced everything together. Owen and Nora Nash, building their horse ranch into something respected throughout the Sacramento Valley. 2 more children came, a daughter they named Elizabeth after Nora's sister, and another boy they called James. The house expanded to accommodate the growing family. The breeding program flourished as Owen's reputation for training fine horses spread throughout California. Nora's sewing business grew as well. Women came from miles around for her to make their wedding dresses, their Sunday best, their children's clothes. She worked late into the evening sometimes, her needle flashing in the lamplight while Owen read to the children by the fire and Rufus snored at their feet. It was a good life. A full life. The kind of life Nora had never dreamed possible during those dark days in Kansas City, during the long months of running and hiding. She never heard from Jacob Thornton again. Whether Owen's confrontation had truly driven him away or some other circumstance had intervened, she did not know and did not care. He belonged to her past, and she had learned not to look backward. Rufus passed away peacefully in his sleep in the spring of 1879, old and gray and well-loved. They buried him on a hill overlooking their land, and Owen carved a wooden marker that read simply Rufus. Good dog, faithful friend. The children brought wildflowers to lay on his grave, and Nora wept for the dog who had stayed with her through everything, who had been her protector and companion when she needed one most. He brought us together, Owen said as they stood looking at the grave. If I had not been injured that day in the saloon, if you had not tended me, if Rufus had not needed someone to care for him while you were gone, who knows if our paths would have crossed again. He was always meant to be part of our story, Nora agreed. Right from the beginning. They got another dog eventually, a puppy they named Red who the children adored. But there would never be another Rufus. Some things, some beings, were irreplaceable. By 1880, Owen and Nora Nash were well established in Sacramento's community. Their horse ranch was known for quality animals. Their children were healthy and happy. Their home was a place of warmth and laughter. One evening in late spring, sitting on their porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of rose and gold, Owen reached over and took Nora's hand. "You ever think about that day in the saloon?" he asked. "When you walked in and found me bleeding?" "Sometimes," Nora admitted. "I think about how different things might have been if I had walked past, if I had not stopped to help. But you did stop. You saw someone who needed help and you helped, even though I was a stranger. Even though I had just admitted to cheating at cards." Owen lifted her hand to his lips. "That is who you are, Nora, someone who chooses kindness even when it would be easier not to." "I chose you," Nora said simply, "and you chose me. Everything else followed from that. I would choose you again. Every single time. And I would choose you." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank lower, painting their land in golden light. Inside the house, they could hear the children playing, Red barking, the sounds of the life they had built together. Nora thought about the long journey that had brought her to this moment, leaving Kansas City in fear. The months of running, sending Rufus away on that train, hoping Owen would understand. The difficult decision to return, to stop running, to stand and fight for the life she wanted. It had not been easy. There had been times when she almost gave up, times when the fear nearly won, but she had come back, for Owen, for Rufus, for herself, and look what that choice had given her: this home, this family, this man beside her who loved her unconditionally, who had waited for her through everything, who had proven every single day since that his love was real and lasting. "I am glad I came back," Nora said softly. "I am glad I came back for both of you." Owen smiled, the expression transforming his weathered face into something beautiful. "So am I. Every single day I am glad you came back." Samuel called from inside the house, wanting his parents to come see something. Elizabeth was singing one of the songs Nora had taught her. James was probably getting into mischief, as he usually did at this hour. "We should go in," Owen said. "In a moment." Nora leaned her head on his shoulder, not quite ready to leave this perfect instant. "Let us just sit here for one more moment." So they sat, hands clasped, hearts full, as the California twilight deepened around them and their children's laughter drifted through the open windows. Two people who had been lost and alone, who had found each other against all odds, who had built something beautiful from the broken pieces of their pasts. The drifter had left, but her dog had stayed with the cowboy, and one spring she had come back for both. That choice, that return, had been the beginning of everything. And now, years later, surrounded by the life they had created together, Nora Kincaid Nash knew with absolute certainty that coming home had been the best decision she had ever made. Every hardship endured, every mile traveled, every moment of fear faced, had been worth it to arrive at this place. Here in this home built by their own hands, on land they had earned through hard work and sacrifice, with children who carried both their names and their hopes for the future, Nora had found what she had been searching for all along without knowing it: peace, love, belonging. A place where she was not running from something but running toward something. A future bright with promise, built on the foundation of a love that had survived separation and danger and doubt. She was home. Finally, truly home, and she would never leave again. The seasons continued their endless cycle. Summer yielded to autumn, autumn to winter, winter to spring again. The children grew taller, the ranch prospered, and Owen's hair began to show threads of silver at the temples. Nora's hands grew rough from work but strong, capable of handling whatever life threw at them. In the spring of 1882, Elizabeth turned 6 years old, and Nora made her a special dress with lace trim for the occasion. The little girl twirled in front of the mirror, delighted with her reflection, and Nora felt her heart swell with maternal pride and love. "You like it, Mama?" Elizabeth asked. "I love it, sweet girl. But more importantly, do you like it?" "I love it so much. Can I show Papa?" "Of course. He is in the barn with your brothers." Elizabeth ran off, dress flying, and Nora stood at the window watching her daughter race across the yard toward the barn where Owen was teaching Samuel how to curry a horse while James watched from his perch on the fence rail. Red chased after Elizabeth, barking joyfully. This was what happiness looked like, Nora thought. Not some grand, dramatic gesture, but these small, perfect moments strung together like beads on a string. Her daughter's joy over a new dress, her sons learning from their father, her husband's patient instruction and gentle encouragement. She had not known back in that Kansas City apartment when she was packing to leave Jacob that this life was possible. Had not believed, during those months of running, that she would ever feel safe enough to stop. But here she was, living proof that sometimes the story did have a happy ending. Owen looked up from the horse he was grooming and saw her standing at the window. He smiled and she waved back, a simple gesture of acknowledgement and affection that contained within it years of shared history and unspoken understanding. That evening, after the children were in bed, Owen and Nora sat together on their porch as they did most nights. The spring air was soft and fragrant with the scent of the wildflowers that grew in profusion on their land. "I have been thinking," Owen said, his arm around Nora's shoulders, "about maybe hiring some help. A ranch hand or two. The place is getting big enough that I could use another set of hands, and it would give us more time together. More time with the children." "That sounds wonderful," Nora agreed. "We can afford it now, with how well the horses have been selling." "Never thought I would be in a position to employ anyone," Owen mused. "Back when I was drifting from job to job, cheating at cards to make ends meet, I never imagined I would have all this." "You worked for it. You earned it." "We earned it," Owen corrected. "Everything I have, everything I am, it is because of you, Nora. Because you took a chance on a down-on-his-luck cowboy and his dog." "You took a chance on me too," Nora reminded him. "You waited for me when you could have moved on. You fought for me when it would have been easier to walk away." "That was not taking a chance. That was making the only choice that mattered." Owen turned to look at her directly, his expression serious. "I love you, Nora Nash. I loved you from almost the first moment I saw you, and I will love you until my last breath." "I love you too," Nora said, her voice thick with emotion. "More than I can ever properly express." They kissed, tender and sweet, a reaffirmation of vows spoken years ago and renewed every day through actions and choices, and the simple commitment to keep choosing each other, no matter what. Inside the house, one of the children cried out briefly in their sleep, then settled again. Red barked once at something in the darkness. A horse whinnied from the barn. The sounds of their life, the symphony of their daily existence. "Should we go to bed?" Owen asked. "In a moment." Nora was reluctant to move from this spot, from this perfect contentment. Just a few more minutes. So they sat, wrapped in each other's arms, under a sky full of stars, in the home they had built with their own hands on land they owned free and clear. The drifter who had left had come back not just for the cowboy and the dog, but for herself, for the possibility of a different future, for the chance to stop running and start living. And in returning, she had found not just love but redemption, not just a home but a purpose, not just a family but a legacy. Years from now, when Samuel and Elizabeth and James were grown with children of their own, they would tell their own children about their parents' love story, about the seamstress and the cowboy who met in a saloon, about the faithful dog who kept them connected when they were apart, about the woman who ran away but found the courage to return, about the man who waited and believed and never gave up hope. They would tell their children that true love was not easy or simple, that it required courage and patience and faith. That sometimes you had to fight for what mattered, had to risk everything to gain what was most precious. That the best things in life were worth waiting for, worth working for, worth whatever sacrifices were required. And their children would listen and learn and carry those lessons forward into their own lives. The ripples of Owen and Nora's choices spreading outward through generations, yet unborn. But that was the future, still unwritten. Tonight, in this present moment, Owen and Nora Nash simply held each other and felt grateful for the journey that had brought them here, for every hardship endured and every obstacle overcome, for the love that had survived separation and danger and doubt to emerge stronger than ever. "Time to go in," Owen said finally, as the night grew late and the temperature began to drop. "Yes," Nora agreed. "Time to go home," but they were already home. Had been home since that spring day in 1874, when Nora stepped off the train in Sacramento, and Owen was waiting. When she came back for the man she loved and the dog who had stayed faithful. When she chose to stop running and start living. They walked inside together, checked on their sleeping children one last time, and retired to their own room. Red settled on his blanket by the door, a guardian watching over his family. Outside, the California night was peaceful and star-filled. And in the morning, there would be work to do and children to feed and horses to train and clothes to mend. There would be challenges to face and problems to solve and decisions to make. But they would face it all together as they always had, as they always would. The drifter had come home. The cowboy had found his place. The dog had brought them together and kept them connected. And from that simple beginning, they had built something extraordinary, something lasting, something worth every mile traveled and every tear shed to achieve. A love story for the ages, played out in the Wild West, written in the Golden Hills of California. A story with a happy ending because sometimes, against all odds, the brave ones who dare to love and to hope and to fight for what matters most do get their happy ending. And they lived it, every single day, in every small moment and grand gesture, in the touch of hands and the meeting of eyes, in shared laughter and mutual comfort, in the children they raised and the home they built, and the life they created together from nothing but determination and love. The Wild West was harsh and unforgiving, a place where many dreams died and many hearts broke. But for Owen and Nora Nash, it was also a place where dreams came true and broken hearts healed and love conquered all. Their story was not unique, perhaps, in its basic elements. A man and a woman meeting, falling in love, facing obstacles, overcoming them to be together. But every love story is unique to those living it, and for Owen and Nora, their journey was extraordinary. Their love was miraculous. Their happiness was hard-won and precious beyond measure. And so they lived in their home on the land they owned, raising their children and their horses, sowing and training and building and loving. Day after day, year after year, growing old together in the best possible way. The drifter had left, but her dog stayed with the cowboy. And one spring she came back for both. That was the beginning. But the ending, the true ending, came many years later when Owen and Nora were old and gray, surrounded by children and grandchildren, sitting on that same porch where they had spent so many evenings together. "It was a good life," Nora said, holding Owen's weathered hand in her own. "The best life," Owen agreed, "because I got to live it with you." And that, in the end, was all that mattered, not the money or the land or the success of the ranch, not the challenges overcome or the enemies defeated. Just the simple, profound truth that they had found each other, and chosen each other, and loved each other through everything. The sun set one more time over their California home, painting the sky in familiar shades of rose and gold. And Owen and Nora Nash, together as they had been for more than 40 years, watched the light fade and felt only gratitude for the journey they had taken together. From that first meeting in a Sacramento saloon to this final sunset, it had been a wild ride. But they had held on tight to each other and to hope, and it had carried them through. The drifter came home. The cowboy found his heart. The faithful dog brought them together, and they all lived happily ever after, exactly as they deserved. The end of their story was not sad but triumphant, not an ending but a completion. They had lived fully and loved deeply, and left behind a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. And somewhere in heaven, if such a place existed, Rufus was waiting for them, tail wagging, ready to greet his beloved people when their time came to cross that final river. Ready to be reunited with the two souls he had helped bring together all those years ago in Sacramento, California, in the Wild West, when the world was young and anything seemed possible. That is a love story worth telling. That is a life worth living. That is the happy ending they both deserved and fought for and achieved through courage and faith, and the simple, profound act of choosing love over fear, every single day, for the rest of their lives. And so concludes the tale of the drifter who left, the dog who stayed, and the spring day when she came back for both, beginning a love story that would last a lifetime and echo through the generations. A story of redemption and courage, of patience and faith, of a love strong enough to survive anything and everything the world could throw at it. Their names were Nora Kincaid Nash and Owen Nash. Their dog was named Rufus. Their home was in Sacramento, California. And their love was eternal, transcending time and circumstance to become something legendary, something beautiful, something true. In the Wild West, where life was hard and love was rare, they found each other and held on and built something extraordinary. And that, dear reader, is the greatest achievement of all. Not riches or fame or power, but the simple, miraculous act of two people choosing to love each other through everything, forever. That is the story. That is the truth. That is the happy ending they earned and deserved. And it is a story worth remembering, worth retelling, worth holding in our hearts as proof that love, real love, can conquer all. The end.